Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. In a world where action movies are constantly exploding at the box office, our heroes take on the monumental task of dissecting and analyzing all aspects of action movies to truly understand what it takes to make a great action film. Ben Bateman, Andrew Ghai, in a Popcorn Talk Network exclusive. This is Action Movie Anatomy.
Boom! What's up, everybody? Welcome to Action Movie Anatomy. This is our 10th episode. Count them, 10 episodes. And we today are doing one of the greatest films in the history of American cinema. A very special movie that I like to call Terminator 2 Judgment Day. But everybody likes to call it that, actually.
Yeah, I think that's the title of the movie.
This is the title of the movie. So this is Action Movie Anatomy. Welcome to the show, guys. We dissect action movies here on Popcorn Talk, the online movie network dedicated to talking film and all things movie-related. I'm joined today by my excellent co-host, Andrew Ghai.
What's up? I'm so excited to talk about this movie. I love this movie. I haven't seen it in like 10 years. I watched it twice last night, so...
Yeah. Very exciting. And our very special guest,
That's right, Andrew. Guy.
our exciting and talented and wonderful director, Ryan Brookhart.
Where is he? That's me.
A man that actually owns a life-size Terminator endoskeleton in his home. We actually have a picture we're just going to show you guys really quickly. You can see him standing next to his boy.
Yeah. Looking like a sitcom dad.
This guy has the coolest adult toy collection. No, okay, that...
I actually do.
Oh, man.
Let's
Can we cut? Can we just start over?
That's not it.
Toy collections
go.
for adults.
Now, I'm the guy on the right. Or the left, I'm sorry.
You have that is the most adult toy he
That
owns.
is the biggest adult toy I've ever seen in my life.
That's a pull quote.
I would say Ryan is overqualified to be our guest on today's episode.
Absolutely.
At least in some regard.
So this is a show where we talk about action movies, and they have to be of a base level of quality here to talk about them on this show.
Absolutely.
They have to hit 4 basic rules. So aside from being made after 1981, which is sort of the initial qualifier, and I did actually hear somebody arguing against that the other day on Twitter, somebody was engaging with me.
Yeah.
But that is the rule for now. Sometimes we step aside of these. The 4 rules are: 1, the hero always plays by their own rules. Rule number 2, the hero and the villain are always the smartest people in the room. Rule number 3, the movie is driven by a police, military, or political figure. And lastly, there is at least 1 explosion. I think the 4th rule seems to be the one that is always...
Who made these rules?
We made these rules.
The two of you did?
This is our show.
All right. I'll challenge a couple of these.
Oh.
About this movie?
About this movie?
About this movie.
Well, we'll get into that. But before we get into that, we're going to show the trailer. The trailer for Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Which is, a pretty darn good movie as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the trailers weren't quite as crazy back then, but this one was still enjoyable. God, it's so sweet. You know, the one thing about this movie and its effects...
Oh, we can talk over the movie?
Let's just go background.
Is that the very opening battle scene?
Yeah.
Is pretty great still.
Yeah, it is really
the
good.
war? Yeah, like even the robots. The worst part about it is probably the animatronics of the Terminators, but they're real.
It's crazy. They made them.
Yeah, they made them.
They're like walking models.
Yeah. And
it's James Cameron doing that really great rear projection thing, which he did a lot in Aliens, which is, instead of green screen, I don't know if you guys know this, but they're acting in front of a giant movie screen, so they're seeing these big ships. The actors are.
Oh, okay.
On set.
Interesting. I did not know that.
In fact, there are a few times during the film, we can talk about this, where they use the rear projection to a super bright rear projection to in place of like green screen.
Okay.
Chroma key or whatever they called it at the time.
That's got to help with acting.
Well, not just that, but it also helps with post. And also, if it's done really, really well, it's pretty seamless.
Yeah.
The scene where John Connor is saved by Arnold when there's the big truck chase.
Right.
A lot of that is rear projection.
Interesting. Wow. When he pulls him off the bike.
That's all rear projection.
Oh, wow. That makes sense. That does sound like a ridiculously dangerous stunt to try to pull with a kid.
And if you guys go back and watch it, whoever watches it, you pause it, you'll actually see it. but in the Blu-ray re-release, the Skynet release, they punched up the contrast a lot, and it's even more seamless than it was even at the theaters.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go.
Yeah, that's a good trailer. You know.
It's good. It's amazing how awesome this movie is and how many great moments there are where, like, if they were to remake this trailer now, it would be so much better.
Oh, it'd probably be like a top 10 trailer.
Yeah, there's enough cool stuff in this movie that,
Well, there'd be that boom.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The
Impending.
You're talking about
like,
you're talking
gong.
about the signature Nolan. The
There'd be like 10 of those.
Yeah.
And everyone would be turning towards the screen, camera sort of down, looking up at him.
There's actually a hilarious subculture of trailer recuts that you can find that like will take those effects.
they're amazing.
The Shining is my favorite.
I've never seen that one.
My favorite is the Mrs. Doubtfire
Can that be
recut as a
pulled up?
horror movie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, The Shining, you see.
You have to
Shining is
download
like
those
this
videos.
happy, like, feel-good comedy.
Right.
Yeah,
I have to look at that when I saw that.
There's a couple really good ones. One is Dumb
Is
and
this
Dumber.
straight vodka?
Yeah. It's like, there's Dumb and Dumber like remade as like a psychological drama.
Inception.
Yeah, yeah.
Really? I
And
haven't
then
seen this one.
my favorite one, which is like super hilarious and like kind of childish, but it's from like a decade ago. I remember finding somebody like made this, except the theory is that Terminator, he like comes to Earth and it's like it starts out like he was a gay Terminator,
Right.
and it's like he ends up having like this forbidden relationship with John Connor, and then it's
They
like
knew it was wrong.
yeah, it's really dumb, but
I
it's
have this movie, I think.
all right in your adult film collection. All right, let's get into the show.
Shit, I can't believe I slipped that up.
So, guys, what we do when we start the show out is we all share a
That's what
thesis
she said.
statement. Essentially, we share a thesis statement. It's just a scene from later in the movie. We'll actually chat about this later, but yeah, just kind of
just
play the
there.
background
There's
here.
some rear projection.
Okay.
Not there.
But so the first thing we
There.
do in this show is that we start out with a thesis statement, a bold statement, and anybody who is watching, you guys feel free to chime in with your own thesis statements, your own bold statements. But this is like something it shouldn't be too personal. Like this is one of my favorite movies. It should be something very strong, a strong idea, a strong statement. So I'm gonna start with our guest, with Ryan.
Let's save this clip for later.
Yeah, well, we
Yeah.
can play it again later, but we'll talk. This is actually the ultimate action scene we're gonna get to later in the show. But
Perfect. All right, so Ryan.
This is the convenient liquid nitrogen truck or something. What is that?
yeah,
liquid
yeah. It
nitrogen.
just like says liquid
Did you
nitrogen.
notice the name of the company on the truck?
No.
Yeah, it's the company.
Cryoco instead of Caroco.
Oh no. Look at that.
Another little tidbit.
Little
for you
Easter
guys.
egg.
Another little Easter egg. My bold thesis statement is
Yeah.
not a thesis. It's just a general statement. I think when you look at all of Cameron's movies, this is relatively early in his filmography, but
Yeah.
not that early. They're all love stories disguised as genre pieces, mostly science fiction or action films. But every single one of them, with the exception maybe of Piranha 2, which he wasn't really that responsible for. But if you look at Avatar, it's a love story.
Sure.
It's Pocahontas in space.
Yep.
If you look at the first Terminator specifically,
Yeah.
and I think Terminator 1 and 2 link together, so you can't really disengage one from the other.
Sure.
But look at True Lies, look at, name it.
The Abyss.
Oh, absolutely, The Abyss. The Abyss is about, this estranged couple that,
Sure.
In fact, his Ed Harris's wedding ring saves him.
Right.
Think about that. I mean, that's both literal and deeply metaphoric.
Obviously, Titanic.
Oh, is Titanic a love story?
No, that's
That's the only one.
It's about a
Gives
man
away.
and his
very
boat.
much a science fiction film.
That's great. I
Yeah.
really like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at it that way, it's also a great driver for, I think the best genre pictures. Is that, if you look at a lot of films, why did they not succeed so well? And it's because they had no real core, point to them.
Sure.
They were like, well, we're going to throw more explosions and we're going to do this. But, Cameron's always been look, for better or for worse, but I think mostly for better, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and there's this deep beating heart of something romantic or, that's
I think he finds that love is something everyone can relate to. It's like the most powerful, driving, engaging force in the world. And if you can tie that into action movies,
Right.
if you can tie it into any story, it's going to make it better. The Lord of the Rings movies, Gladiator is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, all these have underlying love stories in them to
Right.
make them so much better.
Well, it is interesting too when you think about the fact that pretty much nobody compares to Cameron when it comes to financial success as a director, and you have to ask.
Spielberg and Lucas are both incredibly successful directors.
Agreed, but he's still, as a director and producer, he's still almost in a class of his own.
Yes.
With the top two ever. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what does it really take to make a hit? and he's figured it out. And maybe it's exactly that you're talking about.
I think it is.
Well, I mean, look at Titanic as sort of an example. If you put Titanic next to Terminator 2 in this respect, you had with Titanic the guys wanting to go see the film. I'm not saying that I'm one of those guys necessarily, but the guys wanted to see the film because they wanted to see that boat go down.
Right. Yeah.
And the girls wanted to see it because they wanted to see the romance between Leo and what's her name,
Winslet.
Kate Winslet.
Yeah.
And so you served both, audiences completely.
And Andrew went in to see Billy Zane.
Billy Zane. See the boat?
Listen to your friend Billy Zane.
I know.
He's a cool dude.
He's a cool dude.
He's a nice man.
Yeah.
He also has a large adult toy collection.
Let's move on to the.
All right. So my thesis or my bold statement is that this is the best cast action movie of all time.
I'm gonna piggyback on yours.
Yeah.
This is the greatest action movie of all time.
The greatest action movie of all time.
The greatest action movie
That is
of all
a very,
time.
very bold statement.
Bold.
Your statement about Mad Max Fury Road was the very same statement.
Yeah, well, I saw it a week ago. Or a week before the show. I was riding a high one.
Popcorn talk people.
I stand by mine.
I stand by mine, absolutely.
But I'd like you to explain yours first. Best cast ever.
I think that, what did Ebert say? Ebert said something a long time ago, obviously, when this movie came out. He goes, Schwarzenegger's genius as a movie star is to find roles that build on rather than undermine his physical and vocal characteristics. Obviously, that comes with direction and writing from Cameron. But you look at Patrick, you look at Hamilton, even Furlong.
Yeah.
Everyone's pretty... And Morton, right?
Joe Morton, yeah.
They're all great in this movie.
Yeah, they are.
And even the bikers in the bar in the beginning, the parents, I can never remember that guy's name, but his dad, he's the weasel in Air Force One. Xander
something.
Xander
Berkeley?
Berkeley, yeah.
Xander Berkeley.
They're all great. Everyone is cast so well in this movie. I think this is the best cast action movie of all time.
Well, they're iconic. They're iconic in memory. Every role, right? And that's got to be an indicator. You don't go like, oh, such and such should have played this or could have played it. It's like, so this will build on mine. So, okay, you talk about favorite versus greatest. That's a conversation that you can always have when you're characterizing sports or movies, anything that you're passionate about that people like to rank. It's a totally different conversation. I can say my favorite movie of all time is Point Break, but Point Break is certainly not the greatest movie of all time. It just happens to be my favorite. When you talk about qualifying something as the greatest, it's almost like if you are going to put out a candidate from your political party to run for president, they can't just be an awesome dude. They can't just be a great guy who's done some cool stuff. They have to hit all these qualifiers. It's kind of like royalty. It's like if you're going to be the king, well, that's royalty. But in the case of this, when you're talking about the greatest action movie, there's a number of factors that I think go into it. So casting, financial success, quality of acting, quality of plot,
critical reception,
how it plays in memory. Does it, it's like thinking about this movie now, you're like, everything about the greatest action movie of all time is in this movie. It doesn't miss any of those things that you would want to have on the resume if you were going to try to qualify it, like putting it up against Die Hard or putting it up against, I don't know, The Matrix or The Fugitive or something like that.
I mean, I guess technically,
it was nominated for 6 Oscars.
Yeah.
I mean, how many action movies get nominated for 6 Oscars?
Yeah, like Cameron was pulling to get Hamilton nominated for leading actress. It didn't work, obviously, but she's great in it.
So I think this is my vote.
I didn't know that. Yeah. But they were full on married at that point, right? Or they were just getting divorced.
I think they were just getting. I think they'd already gotten divorced. Actually,
Okay.
I think it was 87, 89 or something like that. Just before the movie came out. But
Gosh, had she won after the divorce, that
who
would have
knows,
been
right?
Uncomfortable.
And then who would have kept the Oscar? Anyway, so that's mine. And I think thinking about it, like really, what because I had to ask myself the question of what other action movie would I qualify over this one if I was going to try to make
true action movie.
Right.
Yeah, and I couldn't think of one. I mean, if you exclude the ones like Gladiator, which
which you have to because they're not in the same category.
Yeah, even though one is like sci-fi and one is like
period epic.
Yeah, this is like so clearly a popcorn movie. You know what I mean? It's a great version of it, but it's so.
Well, yes, but I would say that the best action films are films that are not necessarily built as action films. I'll give you an example. It's not an action film. I think The Exorcist is one of the great American films, not because it's written as a horror film, but because it's actually just a really good film.
Yeah. Okay.
And that it's the horror and the drama and the philosophical conversations in that come from a very authentic place. They don't come from like, well, now we got to hit this beat, we got to hit this beat, we got to hit this beat. And I think when you look at films like Terminator, like the first Terminator, the action seems very organic. It feels like, well, we're not just going to have an action scene right about now.
It's like a function of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not apologetic in that I really dislike. Michael Bay may be a wonderful person, but watching those films, almost every single film, it's like, okay, every 5 minutes there's going to be an action scene. We're going to build up. We're going to have a bigger action scene.
We need to have some.
Now we're going to
comedy
see the
in
birth
between.
canal of what's her name? You know, she's riding a bike, and
Right.
now we'll have an explosion, a smaller explosion. And I just, with Terminator 2, the action felt organic to the movie.
Yeah.
I think it might have been Siskel that said that like every part of this movie is just a perfect chain link in creating this perfect chain. Like there's not one thing that's unnecessary in this movie.
It comes pretty close for me. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is still probably the most perfect movie.
We have an interesting, and we can't go too far into
in terms
this
of like that
keep-
genre that slips into the
Yeah,
action.
right. And that's the whole thing with sci-fi meets fantasy meets adventure. For whatever reason, the Indiana Jones movies have a hard time making it into this show. Like we are reluctant to include them for some reason.
I'm talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark. Forget the other movies.
Right.
You think
I like
Raiders
this.
is more of an action movie? Because I think the later ones are more of an action movie in the commercial sense.
Well, like our type of action.
I'm just
like
talking.
Temple of
Well,
Doom.
no, I'm talking about from a purely like if you're just saying I want to make an action movie, then obviously they said let's do Temple of Doom.
Yeah,
it's just an
exactly.
action film,
Exactly.
which at the time was I think criticized by Siskel Beard as being like excessive and
Right.
you know.
Well, fair enough. Let's talk about our sort of favorite moments. Our fist bump moment. This is another one that we like to have you guys follow along with. And if you do want to tweet at us during the show, if you're watching this live, or you do watch this and you decide you have your own opinion, you can hit me up at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter. Andrew?
At Andrew Ghai on Twitter, Ghai.
And Ryan is a nomad. He doesn't mess
Actually, I
with
do have
social
Twitter.
But he does have one.
Yeah, I am.
He's got a ghost Twitter. It's
At Ryan Brookhart.
yes, his name.
You're just gonna like throw me under the bus there. A Twitter bus.
So please, if you have your own ideas, this is called Fist Bump Moment.
bus.
And this is essentially, you're watching the movie and you're like, something happens and you may be alone sitting on your couch and you look around and you're like,
Are you pumping your fist?
is anybody else seeing this right now? Is anybody else seeing this right now? This is so awesome. And that's a fist bump moment. It can be kind of anything. It can be a small emotional moment, anything at all. So
Right.
I am going to jump in with my own first because we started on that side last time. And what I'm going to say is the music in this movie. The opening frame. So Linda Hamilton gives her opening monologue, and she talks about the 3 billion lives were lost on August 27th, 1997, or whatever it is. And then it's like, and it fades into the flames, and it's,
Oh, yeah.
and then it's just those weird, like that weird horn, and it's like, every time that happens, I'm like, God, this is so sweet right now that I get to watch this movie.
Well, that's the thing we talk about with these movies that are in the 90s. We talk about how good, like the music is like, this is your emotion right now.
Yeah.
And right now. And right now. And so like the beginning of it, most all of them, like it'll have that like that slow somber part and then like the dun dun dun. You're like,
Yeah.
yes, get excited to watch this movie.
And actually, the sound effect of the big drums, I believe it's the composer hitting frying pans in his house recorded. They're not
Yeah.
actually drms.
They use that for the sound effects in
God,
this
I
movie
used to
and the
know.
things
What,
that they
what is
do.
he? What's his name again? Michael? Is it not Michael Caine? What's his name?
Who the
The composer.
I can't remember off the
Slash-
top of my head.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
We'll look it up.
Popcorn talk
We'll figure that out.
fails in this moment. I can't remember.
So my fist pump moment
Yeah.
is when you're having that realization that, oh my God, the two Terminators are about to meet.
Yeah,
in
right,
the
right.
mall. You see one of them walking. You see Arnold walking with the flowers. And you see Patrick coming in like in the cop suit.
Slow mo.
Yeah, and another thing about him is when he goes and talks to the parents.
Yeah.
he's so good.
Yeah.
It's like the sweetest, most believable. Like, oh, this guy's just a nice cop.
And a little pedophile thing going on. That's a good-looking
little
kid.
creepy. Yeah.
You know,
Can I
if
keep
a
this
cop
picture?
says that, I'm like, whoa, huh? What?
Yeah. And he said, and what's he say? He's like, there's a big guy here on a motorcycle. He's like, I wouldn't worry too much about him.
He like stops
And they
for a
clearly
second.
don't really
though.
care.
Yeah, yeah. They're
They're
like,
like,
whatever.
okay.
But yeah, it's that moment when you're like, they're about to meet for the first time, their
Yeah.
first battle.
It's like, yeah, it's so sweet. I also just, it's such a great epic moment where he opens and the flowers come out and he's got the
Oh
shotgun.
yeah, slow mo.
Slow mo and Robert Patrick get down. It's just so good. I love this movie so much.
Down.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's great. All right,
Down
what do
here.
you got? Fist pump moment.
It's when Sarah Connor gets the upper hand. It's the moment when is it Dougie? I think it's Dougie, the order who licks her face.
yeah. Oh, that-
she hits him with the nightstick.
Which is real.
From that
Yeah.
Well, she was super
pissed at
method during that whole from that moment up to the point where she encounters the T-800 again.
Yeah.
The entire movie switches, and her character goes from like the long hair. Literally, her hairstyle changes. She's pulling her hair back. You see her face. She is physically aggressive. She knows what she's doing, and the film suddenly makes a sharp turn, and that whole sequence is a fist pump moment.
Yeah, it's
I'm
great.
old enough to say I saw the film at the Cinerama Dome when it came out, and that was the first major cheer that went through the entire audience. Mm-hmm.
She's also we talk pretty frequently on this show about strong female characters, and there's more and more of them now.
She might be the greatest one of all time. She's terrifying.
Yeah, well, there's only
she's also very complicated, which I think really is I think sometimes lost in conversations about T2.
It's basically her and Ellen Ripley are like the two classic ones that get referenced all the time,
and Sigourney.
No, that's Ripley. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Those are the two that get.
What?
I don't know.
We haven't watched it in a while, but yeah, I mean,
well, Ripley goes from kind of a place in the second film as being wounded to regaining her strength and even getting her a surrogate daughter.
Right.
Whereas Linda Hamilton's character goes from, wounded and confused to strength, and then she, in a way, becomes a surrogate Terminator for a brief moment.
Yeah, she's gonna go.
She gets dressed in black. She goes to kill Dyson. She can't do it. She's saved by, her son.
Yeah.
Where then at that moment, it's the first time she says, "I love you."
Yeah,
and so she kind of like, so she has it's a really complicated character, and
such a good character.
Linda Hamilton did an obviously
incredible job.
Amazing job.
Funny thing about that, in the mental hospital or in the institute, I don't know if you guys were watching our episode with Fast and Furious. We had Debbie Evans on, the stunt driver.
Yeah.
And Debbie told us a story about how not only did she have to go on a strict, regimented, low-fat diet and work out regularly so that she could pull off looking like Linda in the driving scenes, but she also is in this scene when Linda's doing these non-stop pull-ups.
And I go, "That was you?" She goes, "No."
She goes, "I was the one underneath her holding her legs, picking her up and down,
I know, she said she was on all fours, and she's got her legs on her back, I think. And wow. I think she was supporting her body. I think I could be misremembering that, but I felt like that's what she said.
Okay.
She's off camera. She's like under. Yeah. She's like supporting her body weight.
Yeah. She's definitely off camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty hilarious.
That's awesome.
Yeah. She was a great guest.
Yeah. She was an incredible guest.
She was like, what'd she say? She was like, she got like 6 months to prepare. They gave me 3 weeks or something.
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah.
But anyway, speaking of Linda Hamilton, let's get into star profiles. We're going to kind of talk about where these guys were in their career, when these moments happened, when this movie happened. So we'll start with Schwarzenegger. So interestingly enough, when I was looking at his filmography, this kind of blew my mind that 2 of the previous 3 movies to this were comedies. I didn't realize he was so firmly into comedy territory at that point. So you have Twins in 1988. You have Total Recall in 1988, which is obviously not a comedy. And then Kindergarten Cop in 1990.
Yeah.
And then this comes out, the most successful action movie of its era.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, when I was a kid, I did not think Kindergarten Cop was a comedy.
Really?
It was like kind of an action movie for me, like kind of an adventure movie. I loved it.
Such a sweet picture.
Yeah, so sweet. Obviously, when you go back and watch it as an adult, it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's like so.
But it starts as this great sort of boilerplate action Schwarzenegger film.
Exactly.
He's got a beard. He's got a shotgun. He goes in and roughs up the bad guys. That's how the film starts.
I haven't seen it since God only knows. I can't remember the last time I saw it.
Mid-90s.
I've seen like chunks of it on TV a bunch of times probably, but I have like vague memories of the movie.
It's a solid Ivan Reitman film. Yeah, director of Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Don't we talk about how, because The Rock comes up on the show all the time. We talk about The Rock constantly because in modern day when recasts and things, comparing people, it's very difficult to come up with guys that match the physicality of these classic guys.
Right.
And we always talk about how it's the reason like Chris Pratt is so good is because he can play the everyman, where like that's not a school teacher.
This was kind of his attempt at being the everyman, and no one believes it. It's impossible.
Can't be a bodybuilder who's like a school teacher. I mean, like I guess you can, but like you just don't look like it at all.
Right. Like I get the comedic effect of it, but it just doesn't. It just doesn't work.
Doesn't play, right?
Yeah. So he's in a great part of his career right now.
Yeah, this is really good because Total Recall's.
But it was a risky part of his career. I mean, he does
starting
comedies,
to do comedy.
and they could fall flat, and they don't.
Because the mid '80s. I mean, prior to this, Twins is '88. Predator's 87, I think, or 86.
Yeah.
It's just a year or two before, which is almost the ultimate Schwarzenegger badass movie. So basically Terminator, Predator, and T2 are the 3 that you like. That's like the most badass, I guess, Commando, but it's really corny.
Well, that and Jingle All the Way.
Yeah. Let's be honest. I think we all saw that for Sinbad. So yeah, that's Schwarzenegger. So then you jump over to Linda Hamilton, and this is very surprising. So she's so good in T2, right? There she is, like such a badass. She's so good in T2.
Shredded.
Yeah, she's jacked. She does a great performance. She looks awesome. But you look at her career. That's like the years preceding this. It's basically nothing. There's Mr. Destiny in 1990, which is a movie
with Jim Belushi.
Yeah,
right?
with Belushi,
right.
which is like a comedy. She's like the wife or something
Baseball
like that.
Game. Movie.
Yeah, it's like a total like one of those 80s screwball comedies. It's like the end of the wild comedy generation, you know what I mean? Bachelor Party and all those movies. That's like that feel. Beauty and the Beast TV series for a couple years from 87 to 89.
Right, this is like the only time we've ever talked about a prior film being a TV series.
Just because it was one of the relevant credits.
Exactly, yeah.
And,
But Beauty and the Beast was a very popular CBS
I mean,
series.
be that as it may, even if it was insanely popular, in 1987 or 89, TV didn't hold the same weight that it does now in terms of dramatic quality. I mean, you could be on the most popular
sure.
TV show in the world.
There were also only like 5 channels. So I mean,
yeah, true enough. And then King Kong Lives in 86, which I don't even know if anybody saw that, but
I am not.
Oh my gosh! Of course, King Kong Lives. Right.
How could we forget?
Oh yeah.
I can't really tell if you're being serious or not. I kind of think that you know what you're talking about here, that actually maybe, no?
No, I know that film. Yeah, yeah. It's
And this is-
terrible. Yeah. Dino De Laurentiis, he produced another King Kong film.
Fair enough.
This was Furlong's first
horrible.
film ever. He had no prior acting experience at all.
Yeah, I think
Founded a boys' club by this casting director.
exactly.
She saw him and
Hundreds of boys auditioned for the film, and he was the one that was picked, and it kind of, I mean, obviously started his career.
Yeah, he never, like, the other one that's, like, very memorable that he was in is
Pet
American
Sematary.
History X.
Yeah.
oh, Pet Sematary.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Two.
Pet Sematary.
Those, I think.
Yeah, I never saw those movies.
They're good.
Oh, okay.
But and then I guess probably like Detroit Rock City was another one when we came out. I think I remember watching that
For
movie.
me, his peak is American History
Yeah,
X. But that's just because I love that movie.
And definitely that's the first one that comes to mind for me. But it's weird that he's been doing movies for as long as he has, and he works a lot. Like if you look at his filmography, he's in a lot of stuff.
Is he still working?
Yeah, tons. TV, all kinds of stuff. He's just not. His name just isn't really out there.
Well, he. I don't mean this in a mean way. He aged very differently than I think maybe would have worked to his advantage.
Okay. I haven't I just was looking at the credits. I haven't seen
Yeah.
anything recently. But anyway, getting into production development and how this movie was made.
James Cameron.
Yeah, so Cameron just sort of is like the guru. So we talked about Mario Casar when we were doing the Rambo episode a few weeks ago.
Talk about him and his buddy.
Yeah, Andrew Vanya, right?
Yeah.
And these are like producers that worked on some of the Rambo movies. There's a few producers listed here. There was 5 listed total on the production team. I listed 3 because the other 2, I mean, they had credits. These ones seemed particularly relevant. So you have Mario Casar, who worked on first 3 Rambo movies. He worked on Terminators 2, 3, and 4, Cliffhanger, Total Recall. Galen Hurd, who worked on the first 3 Terminator movies, Armageddon, Aliens, and then Cameron. And they're relevant because Casar obviously was a big action movie guy in the 80s. And he was working with Schwarzenegger on Total Recall. In a weird turn of events, basically, Schwarzenegger was like, hey, Cameron wants to do another Terminator movie, but the rights are owned by this other company partly, and this company's going bankrupt, so they can't get the money. You should just buy them out. Get the rights, and let's make this movie.
Yep.
And so Mario was like, okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, I think we can make another Terminator
He must be
movie.
incredibly wealthy.
Well, he also had a
must be.
pedigree. He was producing the Rambo films.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Rambo 2 and 3. I don't know if he did the first one. Maybe he did.
He ended up buying the rights for $5 million from Hemlin.
Yeah.
And he gave Arnold a $14 million plane
Yeah.
for doing the movie.
That's so sweet.
On top of your massive salary, here's just a plane.
Yeah.
Just thanks.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So then you look at Galen Hurd, who
I
was...
get a cup.
Yeah, we should get cups. We should just get AMA cups. We should talk about that.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
I like the idea of it. So Galen Hurd, who was married to Cameron at one point, she actually was the only producer that worked on this movie that also worked on the first Terminator. And she was one of the people that helped him make the first Terminator. So he was working, I think, as something like a production designer, a set designer, or something like that at the company that she was an assistant for. They sort of came up and ended up meeting in some sort of production role, and then she ended up helping him make the first Terminator movie for obviously a very cut rate budget.
Yeah, they were working with Roger Corman's company at the time, and I don't know what name it was at that point, but yeah, he done production design on Battle Beyond the Stars, and she was, I believe, on that as well. So
yeah. There you go. That's filling in the blanks of the jumping around that I was
what
trying
I'm
to do
here
there.
for.
Yeah. So she's one of the producers, and then you have Cameron. So this movie actually didn't start. He didn't actually start working on this movie until 1990, which is crazy considering the scope. It's the first movie that ever cost $100 million.
Yeah.
That's a huge milestone in its own. Considering like $100 million on a movie nowadays is still pretty relevant.
Right.
And this is 1991, but the fact that they only started making the movie in 1990, it came out in 91, and it cost $100 million. I mean, that's pretty accelerated.
And the original budget was like, what, 12 million?
Yeah, 12.
Yeah, 12 million. Let's just multiply
What do
that
you
by
mean for
8.
the first film?
No,
for
this
this.
one.
Oh, this
It started at 12 million.
Yeah, so it gets to 86
know
million.
that.
It balloons way up, right?
And the producers start freaking out then.
Yeah, and they're like, hey, you should cut some scenes. Well, I think they suggested they cut the battle at the beginning.
The biker scene.
The bike. Oh, yeah.
They wanted to cut the biker scene.
the Schwarzenegger showing up
Yeah.
with the cigar, and Schwarzenegger like refused, and he's
Well,
like,
yeah, I was like the only person that would cut that as a studio head.
yeah. I love that Schwarzenegger's like such like the nobleman. He's
Yeah.
like,
It's
of
like,
course
you
he is.
kidding
He
me?
ended up being the freaking governor of California. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
How much of that had to do with the sort of the development of the CG that was
quite a bit.
quite a bit, right?
They spent a lot of money developing all of the stuff that was going to be Robert Patrick, all of like the
The
liquid metal stuff.
T-1000 stuff,
Right.
yeah.
Which, just like with Avatar, it was cutting edge
I was going to
technology.
say that's sort
absolutely.
of you can sort of see a
They
through
didn't
line
even
there.
think that they could do it.
Right.
Until Cameron made The Abyss. And they were like, okay, well, kind of with what he's got going on in here.
With the water tentacles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, I think we can make this happen.
And that's when he was, and they spent all that money. I think something like $6.5 million was spent developing the technology for the 3.5 minutes of screen time that you see Robert Patrick as the in like various liquid forms, which is pretty interesting. But
So from 12 to wow.
yeah. Yeah, it gets to 86 and it capped. The highest estimate is 102, but 100 is like what they say. So 171 days, shot in 1990, 1,000 crew members, shot all over California. So this is one cool thing that I saw in like little making of videos, that Cameron, because during pre-production he would have so many crazy ideas, these sets, and the ways that he wanted things to happen, he would design these little miniature sets. Super tiny, and he had like a little handheld camera like the size of his thumb that he would go in and he would like sort of film little miniature versions of what he wanted to see, as well as storyboarding. And I found him making a video that I saw some of this in. I didn't pull any of it, but I thought that was like a pretty cool idea because he's so inventive.
Yeah, there's just so much going on in his brain at all times. Like the only way he's like, well, let me draw you a picture. Let me make you a model of what I'm thinking of,
Right.
so I can show you exactly what's happening in my brain.
Spielberg did that with Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
Some
Makes
pretty
sense.
famous photographs of him with little army men sitting down
Oh,
there.
yeah, I've
and
seen
doing
those.
that. Yeah, I think there's a few pictures like that. And David Lean did that.
David Lean.
He directed a little film called Lawrence of Arabia
Oh,
I
okay.
heard of this film.
and Weekend at Bernie's 2.
That's a
I think that's a
That's
fun
a good
fact,
film.
David Lean.
that's a good film.
Those are. I love the Weekend at Bernie's movies.
So you got like you got Cameron. Cameron co-wrote this with William Wisher Jr., who's basically he's really just an action movie writer primarily. I mean, his credits are not they don't run rampant. He worked on Terminator 1, Judge Dredd. He's got something coming out pretty soon with John Moore, who's like a big action movie guy.
Okay.
But his writing, I mean, everything he's worked on pretty much has been just an action movie, which means James Cameron is almost entirely responsible for writing this movie, really. And Wisher's only credited as writing some stuff in both films. So
This movie's written phenomenally.
it's very well written, yeah.
It is like
It's lean. It's very lean.
Yeah, it's clean. It's written well. It's believable. I don't know. Cameron's he's a genius. Like the more and more that you look into what he's done, like you hear it from everyone. Like, oh, he's the greatest director of all time. He's this, that, and the other. But like when you actually delve into the man's work and everything that he's done, everything that he's ever worked on,
Yeah.
he truly is maybe the greatest.
Well, there's all these stories you hear about him, right? They refer to him as Iron Jim. That's like one of his nicknames. And on set, he's incredibly demanding. He has a temper on set, but that's just while working.
Right.
But apparently, because his vision for what he wants the movie to look like is so particular. He wants it to feel this certain way that he gets involved in everything. So there's pictures of him. There's even pictures of him touching up Schwarzenegger's makeup. I mean, there's one sequence in like the making of this movie where Schwarzenegger was in the chair with like repaired Terminator for 35 days in a row, and it would take it somewhere between 2.5 and 4 hours every time. And then even Cameron would see, I need to fix this, and he'd get in there himself. I mean, he's not a makeup guy. He's coaching the actors, and he's just so hyper aware of everything on set.
Well, I think when you've got a vision, and you're just naturally, lean towards being an autocrat or somewhat sociopath or whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
and you have talent, then people will fall in lockstep, or they won't. Or after the movie's over, they'll say that guy was a real asshole. But they'll look back and say, but he had a vision.
Right.
And I think that's the trick with making movies in general. Is if it comes out really, really good, he'll be said, oh look, they'll say, oh, he was a genius.
Right.
And I'm hesitant to use words like genius with that. I just did a film myself, and every day it's controlled chaos. You wake up and you go, what is the theme here again? What are these characters? Even if you wrote the script,
Right.
what is this about? And you have to rely on a lot of people, that, if you look at what Linda Hamilton did, yes, she was, part was written for her, but had she not done exactly what, if she had not committed as much as she had, even to learning how to pick a
Right.
lock
Yeah.
on the what do you call it, the thing on the gurney.
Mm-hmm.
She was super committed to that. And yes, she can match his energy and maybe even go over the top, and maybe that's why they got a divorce, who knows. But the fact is, I think that's what it is. When you look at it, you go, wow, he's a genius, and look at this film. I think that he had a real vision, and everyone sort of came up to the plate and matched that, and that's what made it a classic. But I think that there's a lot of great filmmakers out there where the film just runs off the rails, and they may be just as talented as Jim Cameron. But maybe they were just less scared of the other directors.
They also didn't make the 2 highest grossing movies of all time.
That's 3 at their time.
What do you mean? You're talking about Avatar?
And Titanic, that's the 1 and 2.
Well, that's
Ever.
in the future.
Yeah, but even at the time when this one came out, I think this was the 3rd at one point behind E.T. and the first Star Wars.
Yeah.
For a while.
Well, this was a huge gamble, and it paid off big time.
Yeah, big time, absolutely. So, we sort of talked about Cameron loosely all throughout this production notes section. He is kind of unrivaled. Like he's. You mentioned Spielberg and Lucas,
right?
And those would be the obvious names that come to mind for other guys that sort of stand.
Well, they're the big 3. You can't really argue with what the 3 of them have done. And the money that they've made. It's
like direction, production, and quality to some degree with the 3 of those guys and everything they've been involved in. And they do sort of represent. It's not like to say, for instance, somebody like Scorsese, who's like...
Yeah, or Aronofsky or Paul Thomas Anderson. Like, there's these other incredible directors. Yeah. But it's not on the same scale.
Yeah, and the guys that have, like... Who else could we think of who's been making movies for like 30 or 40 years like that? Like Scorsese, or I guess Coppola's kind of way, way past his prime now, but... like other guys that
if you look if you look at Coppola, he's followed, I think, his vision,
right?
And at some point he got tired of making these really big films. He started making very small personal films. And do people see them? A lot of people don't see them. Are they good? They're very personal,
right?
So they're going to polarize people, but they're not necessarily built to be crowd pleasers. They're not necessarily built to be big tentpole films, I guess. And I think to that extent, Coppola is very unique. And I don't think he ever tried to do that.
Agreed. I guess my point was the guys that stick within the studio model and they are making those big movies and they keep making them for long times.
Lucas would not like you saying that. Yeah, he thinks of himself as an independent producer.
That's right. My point's getting lost here because now I'm just rambling. But the point I try to make is if you... stepping outside those 3, there's only a few guys you could even really point to who have sort of
Coppola, Kubrick,
the stones
Scorsese.
that even are right. Exactly, the guys that have done it for long enough. Eastwood, maybe these guys that have made enough big movies and had enough success for a long enough time.
Their way,
right? So it is interesting. I think Cameron sits at the top for me. Spielberg in a lot of ways rivals him. To me, those are the 2. Lucas, just because it's so heavily Star Wars,
right?
But the other 2 were involved in more properties. But anyway, we can talk about
back to the film.
Back to the film, exactly. Interesting note, though, about Cameron is that, he went to school to... What was he going to be? He was going to be a doctor or something like that? He went to Cal State University.
He was an engineer? No.
He was an engineer.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
But he ended up driving a truck to support his screenwriting ambition. And he just had this vision, and he was not going... He went to school for it.
Yeah.
He did the 4-year program, but he just was uninterested in doing...
back to doing exactly what he wants to do, the way he wants to do it.
Drive a truck, make a movie. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Not unlike you.
That's right. Just trying right now.
If you guys need anything hauled, you can call 188. No. So let's talk about critical and box office a little bit on this.
Yeah, please. The critical reception of this movie is just phenomenal. But let's do. Well, they both are. Let's do the numbers first.
Yeah. So first, we can throw up a graphic here showing the worldwide gross of all Terminator movies. Yes, and we have in order. And Genesis
It's very intense there.
Yeah, Genesis is listed here at the end because I think it must have opened somewhere already somehow.
Yeah, it opened last night.
Okay. I pulled this yesterday. I'm wondering. I was trying to figure out where the 8.4 came from.
Who knows?
Yeah.
European, I think it oversees it.
Okay, yeah, like the time difference or something, maybe. Like I don't know, but anyway, primarily $8 million is not does not stack up to the other ones.
Yeah, we'll talk about the movies that have been out for more than a day.
Yeah, exactly. So T2 is, by a long shot, the highest grossing. Funny that T3 is the second highest grossing when T3 is arguably the worst. I haven't seen Genesis yet. I've heard horrible things, but
Have you?
yeah, I've heard pretty bad things.
Interesting.
I think tomatoes, it's like 14%.
Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, you think of as the worst.
I would have to watch that and Salvation back to back again, but I remember at least there were like moments in Salvation that I was like, oh, this is cool, and there were a lot of moments where I was like, this is just lame. But C3, I recall just watching the whole time just being like, this is not good.
I think I'm one of these guys. It's just going to defend till the day I die. Terminator 3. I don't think it's a great film by any stretch, but I think it has some very solid scenes in that movie. Some very solid stuff. I think, going back to Schwarzenegger's kind of commitment to getting things, made things, but it's very well paced. I think it's a really great scene, and there's a few other scenes like that too. I think, is it Claire Danes?
That sounds right. Claire Danes, yeah.
I think she's very good in it. I think
Claire's
that he's terrific in it.
Dallas Howard's in 4.
It gets shit on a lot. I don't know. Can I say it?
Yeah, you just did. No
just
problem,
said it.
man.
Nick Stahl is the kid, right?
Yeah, see,
And Nick Stahl is, unfortunately, I think a lot of people, including myself, said, why couldn't you have brought Eddie Furlong back?
Right.
I mean, was he that drunk? I don't know.
Yeah, it was like 03, 04, something like that.
Yeah, but he could have done it.
I'm not educated enough to talk about those two movies.
Terminator Salvation
right when
is
they
a
came out.
I'm the same way. I saw them both in theaters, and I never saw them again. So I don't like talking quality. I was just noticing it's interesting that T3 made more money than Salvation. Salvation was the most expensive by a long shot.
Yeah.
Yes.
That movie lost money. Well, it didn't lose money worldwide, but it lost money in the States.
Yes.
But the critical reception, on the other hand, of these movies, when I was like reading the reviews, I was reading T2 and I was like, this has to be the best reviewed of all. This has got to be the one, because and then you go back and you look at 1, and 1's the best reviewed.
100%, right?
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
Right.
I mean, it's only
100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's only based on 8 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes.
Really?
There's only 8 cited, and it's an old movie, which makes sense. But there's 65 reviews for the second one. But even so, those 8 reviews are all 10 out of 10. Like it actually made me want to go back and watch Terminator 1 again. I've seen it on TV a bunch of times recently.
Yeah.
It's on like one of those channels a lot. Josh, our friend, always plays it.
El Rey.
Yeah.
The network.
Oh,
It's
right,
always
okay.
on. Yeah.
But
Spike.
I want to go watch it like at home with the sound. I saw it a few years ago.
I mean, that was Terminator was the first R-rated movie I ever saw.
Really?
I was like 5 years old. Blew my mind. It was just like, I was like, this is amazing.
Was it
this
like
is
on
what
HBO?
movies...
Did you just sort of...
I remember we were sitting, I was getting babysat, and I was sitting in my friend's basement while her parents were sleeping that were supposed to be babysitting me, and we found it, and we watched it, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think...
And it is amazing.
And it is. It still is.
Yeah. Not even going to... I agree. I want to watch it again so I could share the opinion.
Right, like
fully,
what about, yes.
Because I remember... The one thing I remember watching Terminator last time was that it feels much more like a thriller, much more like a scary movie in a lot of ways, a drama. It's terrifying in a way that Terminator 2 isn't as much. And I was reading a lot of the reviews and sort of the idea. It seems like the consensus opinion of critics at the time is that Cameron had constructed a really tight, really beautiful sequel to his this sort of incredible success. And as an action movie, a quality action movie, it succeeds on every level. But from a quality piece of dramatic film, there were some critics that seemed to sort of roll their eyes a bit more.
At T2?
At T2.
Right.
That seems to be the difference in, and that's almost just that you almost can't. You can't make a sequel with a studio that wants to make all this money and expect it to... I mean, he made the best possible sequel that he could make. You weren't going to be able to do T1 again. You wouldn't be able to make a movie of that quality, that raw of a feeling. It would have been completely impossible. I mean, how much money did they spend on each... Schwarzenegger's $15 million salary meant 700 words of dialogue total, and he was paid $21,000 per word, which means Hasta La Vista Baby cost him $85,000.
And he says it twice.
You can't pay Arnold $85,000 to say "Hasta la vista" and expect to make the same movie.
Yeah.
You have to evolve and you evolve it in the best possible way.
I mean, this is the only movie ever.
What a cruel way to break that down.
Yeah, right. This is the only movie ever to where the first movie wasn't even nominated for an Academy Award, and the second one, not only was it nominated, it won many.
Yeah,
and to say that
four, right?
won 4,
Yeah.
all for technical,
Yeah.
technical stuff, makeup and sound effects and special effects. But it was nominated for 6. The first one wasn't nominated at all, and that's the only time that's ever happened. So it's really hard to. I mean, imagine trying to make a sequel to one of the greatest movies of all time, and you do it, and it's kind of better.
Yeah.
It really is.
But there's something
But
really...
it's a different movie.
Yeah, there's something really, I think, particularly compelling about James Cameron, though, is that he's really an underdog. I mean, now he's so established in some way. But if you think about Terminator, it was a very, very low-budget film. And
like $3 million or something like that?
Yeah, that's even stretching it to some accounts. But, the way they got things done, and if you ever get a chance, listen to the audio commentary on Terminator, and you'll see what a scrappy production it was. And I got this great thing done. If you look at Aliens, it was a smaller budget than the first film, I believe. And there were so many times people thought, oh, this is going to fail completely. And he employed rear projection there, as an example, in a way to create scale that they just didn't have the budget for otherwise. And you look at it and go, my God, it did so much better than we expected. It was a huge thing. And so he had this sort of kept defying expectations and built this amazing career. And now, of course, he's a super established
superhero
guy.
movie.
But even then, when Avatar was being made, people thought, oh, this is going to just collapse on its own weight.
It's funny, too, if you look
and
at...
it becomes so huge.
Yeah.
And now you're like, well, I guess you can apply the same attitude about Cameron to even this scale. It's like he's just going to go balls out.
If you look at Alien versus Aliens, it is kind of a similar conversation to Terminator versus Terminator 2. It's a very, very similar process because Alien is a gritty, scary movie in space that is it's quieter, and you just see the one alien. It's
more of a thriller.
And
horror movie. Yeah.
Exactly. It's more of a thriller. And Aliens is a full tilt action movie. Bigger set pieces, just kind of generally.
Well, the tagline was
aliens.
"This time it's war."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, Cameron. See, we talk about those rules at the beginning of the show. There's some movies that you're like, well, we have to do the movie. It feels like this show so much, but it doesn't necessarily fit the rules. Aliens is a movie that it's kind of difficult to apply it.
Yeah.
I mean, the villain is an alien. It just.
Well, also, is it Burke? Is also the villain.
Right.
He
Yeah.
represents Weyland-Yutani and all the sort of like undercurrents and
If you
political
take
machinations and
Die Hard, Speed, Point Break, The Rock, these are the movies that represent our show. That's what we
villain.
wanted to do the show on.
right.
But like Aliens is a sci-fi movie, but it feels like those movies. It's the same genre completely. So it's interesting, his tone in T2 and Aliens, they're two of the greatest of all time. And that's just him. That's Cameron. That's his vision. It's so big, but it's credible, but it's dramatic, but it's awesome. There's right?
I mean, it's just like we did Jurassic World.
Yeah.
There isn't there's always like that kind of villain.
Yeah.
You got Newman in the first one.
Newman. Yeah. He's also the I know you're gonna die guy.
Yeah, he totally
Newman's
is.
fully the I know you're gonna die guy.
And then World, you've got D'Onofrio. But really, at the end of the day,
You've got D'Onofrio.
D'Onofrio.
Vanessa.
The bad guy is the T-Rex.
Yeah.
And the Indominus. So it is hard to classify that in our show, but it's like you have to do these movies.
Right.
Well,
And I feel like we should do Aliens.
The T-Rex is a
great
the
villain.
hero.
Well, in
this one.
the most previous, recent one.
Yes.
So lastly, with the the critical and whatnot, before we get into Ultimate Action Scene, you can just sort of see the movies that came out that year. It's another reminder of the difference between now and then about franchises and about action heroes. And obviously, Terminator 2 being the highest-grossing movie is counterintuitive to the rule, but Robin Hood, Beauty and the Beast, Silence of the Lambs, City Slickers, Hook, Addams Family, Sleeping with the Enemy, Father of the Bride. Aside from Naked Gun 2.5, once again, 8 out of 10 are not sequels or pieces of franchises yet. Whereas nowadays, it's generally speaking the opposite. Eight of the highest grossing movies, of this last year were part of franchises and sequels, and you had 2 that weren't. So it's the direction things were going.
I guess the sequel would be Still Sleeping with the Enemy.
Yeah, they never made a sequel to Sleeping with the Enemy.
I know, but I'm just saying.
You can't trick me on the
Half asleep.
All right, so
Waking up with an enemy?
So let's get into the ultimate action scene. We're gonna cue it. I have the second half of it queued up because if I showed the whole thing, it's like 8 minutes or 9 minutes of movie.
I'm down to watch it again.
But essentially, from the minute that they're in the factory, the Cyberdyne HQ, and they realize that the cops are coming and Schwarzenegger just has to start blowing shit up. And that sequence until the moment where they're escaping, going towards the factory, the steel mill, that's just I sort of stretched that whole sequence out in my mind as one piece. So we have them actually on the freeway here, running away.
Such a great scene.
Yeah, there's some really...
I love that they keep using semi-trucks because they're terrifying.
Yeah.
They are. Like, if you're getting chased by a semi-truck on a momotorcycle...
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, if that bumped his motorcycle in the ravine...
Yeah.
He would have immediately died.
Yeah, right. Just it's just the motorcycle
gone. Like a kid on a little bike.
Yeah. So this is great. Like... yeah, it's
good.
It's really good. So this whole scene, one of the pieces I found, and it'll show a little bit in this making of video, we'll cue right after this, but a lot of the stunts here are done by Schwarzenegger's stunt double.
That guy's just incredible.
Yeah, what's his name here?
Is it Davenport? Is that
Peter Kent.
Peter Kent, right?
So there's like this whole sequence where the gun he loses the gun.
Yep.
So he's like, lost one piece of one firearm. Better go get this sweet submachine gun out of the car and just like
an assault rifle.
Yeah. He goes in.
Oh yeah, when he gets the assault rifle, it just starts wailing on the guy's face.
Awesome.
So this right here, that's all real. There's two cars. That's a stunt double. Just gets up there and just starts going to town.
So sweet.
Can you imagine having to execute that stunt? Like you're driving, there's two cars, you're climbing around, you're jumping up.
I don't care if it's going 20 miles an hour. It's still terrifying.
Yeah.
Well,
and he's on the truck during this too, when it gets flipped.
And people are loving, Fury Road, and which is amazing. But I think, in a way, this is a little more impressive even.
Well, you look back
and that there's aside from that rear projection stuff there, this is physical.
Yeah, it's real.
All real.
There's like 3 tractors that are like pulling that truck on its side.
Crazy.
And he's riding it like a surfboard.
I mean, when Arnold drops down into the canal is what I talked about earlier. That's him again. It's the same guy. I mean, he's got cables, and if you look really, really hard, you can actually kind of tell.
The cables?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Finally, they've actually fixed that. Last Blu-ray was. Yeah.
Oh, really? They just completely, it's all gone?
Yeah, they're all gone now.
That's great.
Yeah. So this is
Stan Winston.
Yeah,
this guy is just a genius.
Yeah, he's cool.
Was.
Oh,
well, I mean...
Well, he will always be.
Yes, exactly.
But, so this is like... That's like a... This is like when they're in Cyberdyne, and basically, this whole thing where he's walking and getting shot up. So that's like a prosthetic Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, it's not him.
Yeah. It's an animatronic.
That was made to be destroyed. Yeah, there you go. That's it right there.
That they designed to destroy in the scene. And I was trying to figure out why... Like this is all pretty funny.
What is happening?
Yeah. And he's talking. He's like, "Hey, smile a little more." He's like,
kiss him? That's...
And he says, "Oh, they're not paying you? It's okay. I'll get paid for you." Like I was watching the video, I was cracking up.
Arnold's so awesome.
His craft services.
Yeah, his craft services. I want to tell a quick story on the show. This is going to jump off. This is going to jump off subject just a little bit, but I know I've told you this story before. But my older brother years ago used to drive a bus in Aspen. He was and he was learning to drive like a shuttle in Aspen, and he had this instructor who was teaching him to drive the bus named Hans. And he's this Austrian dude, this little skinny Austrian dude who's like a chain smoker and just always wore like a black pants, black shirt, hair slicked back, smoking cigarettes. Kind of like Dieter from Mike Myers from the SNL sketches. Mm-hmm. And he totally talked in the accent. He had the Austrian accent. And my brother was learning to drive the bus, and there's this giant brake that you have to use on one of these things called a retarder. And my brother was really reticent to use the retarder because it was like made this big loud sound. You see where this is going. It would make this big loud sound, and he was really hesitant. And Hans would like stand there with like his hand on my brother's shoulder as my brother was like driving the bus, and he'd be like, it's okay. Don't be afraid to just give it a little more retarder. It's okay. Do it. Come on. It's okay.
Do it.
Don't be afraid to just give it a little more retarder. So we've been saying that to each other for years. Ever since he told me that story, just made me think of it with the Schwarzenegger.
You have to pull on the retarder.
Yeah, pull the retarder.
Retarder 2.
It's okay.
You got the minigun from Predator.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same minigun, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the physical. It's the same one. So they blow a building up here. This is real.
The third floor, right? They built a third floor.
Yeah, they built a false third floor.
And blew it up. But it's in like Fremont, California. The building's still around.
Yeah.
So everybody's standing around, just like let's just push this button.
Yeah.
Just explode the building.
Yeah.
There's they took 11 cameras to get that shot right and get it cut together well. Did you see there was over 1 million feet of film shot for this movie?
No, I didn't see that.
1 million.
Wow.
That's just incredible. Imagine being the editor. All right, here you go, man.
That's insane. Yeah. So speaking of like that thing, and then also when the helicopter's chasing them, and the helicopter goes under that overpass.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yep.
But the camera guys didn't want to shoot it. They refused to shoot it because they thought it was too dangerous.
I'm not gonna get killed for this movie, bro.
So the pilot, what's his name, Tamboro, right? Mm-hmm. Charles A. Tamboro was willing to fly it, and Cameron got on like a truck with a camera himself to shoot the shot because nobody would shoot it.
Exactly.
That's how committed Iron Jim is to his cause.
That when I read that, I was like, wow, this really has won me over. Like, I already loved Cameron.
Yeah.
But I kind of had like this thing about Cameron. I don't know what it was.
Right.
It's like this, I don't know, like when someone talks about something so much and how great it is, you kind of are like, well, what about this? What about that?
Sure.
But when you read about this movie and what he did,
Yeah.
and that alone, just having the balls to like, okay,
Yeah.
I might die being a camera guy on my own movie.
And we can say, wow, Iron Jim. However, it could have been film trivia to say, oh yeah, that idiot died.
Right,
yeah, right.
In that scene. So,
Crazy.
there's a fine line. Oh, see right there, but
Yeah. I can
that's
see
all
it.
weird.
Okay.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It makes me want to go back and watch it
But
again.
of course it would be. Child service would be like,
Yeah, I don't know about all
Oh
that.
yeah, let's just put Eddie Furlong on this 13-year-old on a bike, and we'll just have
He
him.
doesn't care.
Yeah, interesting enough about him actually. I'm sure you guys read the same thing,
yeah.
but that because he aged during production, his voice changed. Most of his audio in the movie is ADR. Almost all of it, in fact, was done at the end of the film. The only stuff when I think he's talking about why do humans cry.
Yep.
And
I heard about.
they wanted
Was it a girl
what?
that did it? A woman that did his.
No, he went back and did it.
Oh,
They
he
just
did it
changed
back.
the
Oh,
pitch
I see.
on
Okay.
it.
Because his voice had lowered, so it's like, and he's visibly
Yeah.
aged during production. Like
Yeah.
the scenes in the desert,
He's very young.
he
What's
looks
this?
younger. Which one?
Looks like Trace.
Oh, it's we'll get to that. Didn't you direct a movie called Trace?
I did. That's right.
We'll get to
I
that.
can't wait to talk about that.
All right, so that's pretty much the ultimate action scene. We're
great.
as per usual, pushing an hour getting to the categories.
Hey, I mean, we got to do it, especially with a movie like this. If we're going to talk about other movies for 80 minutes, you got to talk about T2 for a while.
It's the greatest movie. It's the greatest action movie of all time. So
That's what you said.
yeah, that's what I think. So let's go over favorite lines, guys. I know we each
Favorite
have one.
lines,
But once
yes.
again, if you guys are watching, please chime in. I'd love to hear your favorite line. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do we got here?
Well, let's let our host go first. Or, I mean, our guest go first.
No, actually, I'd like to hear you.
Okay, fair.
like to
I'll
hear
do that.
Yeah.
I don't know why, and they keep coming back to it over and over, and it gets a little more in depth. But the first time I heard it, I laughed out loud because it's delivered perfectly, and it's just great. And it's when Arnold goes, "What's wrong with your eyes?"
Yeah.
He looks back at him. I don't know why. I just love it. It's like this intense moment, and it's
So you're
it's
like laughing at his performance there.
No, I love his delivery. It's like the perfect timing and delivery for the line, and it's a great little moment to break up like this like it's a sad moment between him and his mom.
Yeah, it is.
And it's one of the few moments of comedy in the film that is just like perfect.
Yeah,
And I don't usually go with comedic lines for my favorite line.
It's a good line. I'm between two. Originally, the line I was going to use is where he's talking about. I think Edward Furlong says something like, "We don't make it, humanity. I mean," and he goes, "Your people have a tendency to destroy themselves," or something like that. And he's like, "Major bummer."
Yeah.
I was going to use that line, but it's almost more like laughable because that's a theme in Cameron's movies. It's the whole like society's arrogance over whatever. The one I actually went with because I think it's so badass is when Sarah Connor is escaping from the mental institution.
Oh, God, such a
and
great scene.
She's got like the roto-rooter and she's got the needle up to Dr. Anderson.
Dr. Prick?
What's his name? Dr. something. Anyway,
I wanted him to die so bad.
yeah,
I hated it.
broke my arm. But she's got the and they're like, oh Jesus, and she's coming up and like, just easy, Connor. She's like, let me just never gonna happen, Connor. And she's like, what's she say? She says something to the effect of like, like we're all gonna die. I believe it, so don't fuck with me. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's just like so intense.
She is so intense.
Yeah,
And then he's got that great delivery. He goes, "Open the door."
Open the
Yeah.
door. I just
great
love that.
beat.
I just love because she's in the previous the last time you saw her, she's like, I don't believe it anymore. And that she's lying, of course. She's like, I don't see the visions anymore, and she's just like, we're all gonna die. I believe it. we're all screwed anyway.
Yeah.
Don't mess with me.
Yeah.
I'll kill him.
It's great.
Yeah, it's this one.
Oh, when she breaks his arm, he's like, "You broke my arm." He's like, "You have 216 other bones in your body."
That's one.
That's one. Yeah,
that's a good line. Yeah. What do you got, Ryan?
Use the retarder.
Yeah.
He's my favorite line
okay.
in the movie.
Come on, just
You
use
have
the
to listen
retarder.
very close for it.
Use the retarder.
It's just the most ridiculous line, and it doesn't really fit into anything. But at the end, when he's just beaten to shit, he goes, "I need a vacation."
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great.
You're like, okay, where did that come from?
It's from Kindergarten Cop, I believe.
Yeah.
It says the same thing.
Yeah. Well,
Does it? You say the same thing?
Yeah.
Same line.
So
He
is that
was-
literally? Is that because I've always thought
No,
it's so
it-
silly, it's so out of character, but why not?
What it was is
You
that
know?
it was in the film. Everyone thought it was ad-libbed. Arnold wasn't sure if he should say it,
Right.
because of Kindergarten Cop, but it is in the original script. I need a vacation.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like comic relief. It is a weird line. I
is.
agree with
I just think it everything sort of stops for just a beat, and you're like, oh right, okay.
Maybe that's the only. In fact, that might be the only flaw. Is that one line? Now
Yeah.
that you bring it up, that's
Really?
like the only line that I'm like, it doesn't make sense with the character. They just broke character for the sake of comic relief.
I mean, it does and it doesn't. I agree that it doesn't really fit, but at the same time, it's like he's gotten "Hasta la vista, baby," and like all these other lines that he's picked up because of Furlong
Right,
being like,
right,
"Dude, you
right.
suck. You're so boring to hang out with. You sound like a robot."
Right.
So I don't know. I think it could be a testament to that moment.
Typically, the subject is terminated. It's so good. I love this movie. Negative.
Yeah, it's a Terminator cannot terminate himself.
Yeah.
They had to
self-terminate.
loop it. Oh yeah, cannot self-terminate. They had to loop it because no one knew what he said the first time.
Well, he said self-pleasure initially.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
You guys should look up that trailer recut. It'll crack you up. So all right, that's its favorite line.
I'm excited about the next section.
Yeah, this is so we do the hero villain ranking every week, and week to week it's like sometimes they don't even qualify. This is one that they absolutely qualify. So it's do the hero and the villain rank in the top 20, top 50 all time in their respective action movie category, heroes and villains. And this is an interesting one because we aren't going to talk about the original Terminator from T1 because that's a whole different villain, but Schwarzenegger's hero, Robert Patrick's villain, and to some degree, because it's like an Easter egg, Linda Hamilton. We already kind of mentioned it. She's maybe the greatest or in the top several female heroes ever. Where do Robert Patrick and Schwarzenegger rank?
Patrick is so good in this.
So good.
He is so perfect. And like the fact that this dude went through and would literally just run his ass off every single day to train for this movie so that when he looks like he's running like 50 miles an hour, he's never phased, never breathing heavy, like never, he's just completely stone-faced.
Yeah.
He's terrifying, he's ruthless, and I think that moment in the beginning when he talks to the parents is probably my favorite moment.
Yeah.
Because it's before you really see how crazy he is.
Yeah.
And he's just the sweetest guy. Like, yeah, a little creepy, but he is just great. And the T2 villain with the swords, it's...
Yeah. Do you have a picture of John?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what a good-looking child. Like, his delivery is just excellent.
It's a good-looking kid.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about him. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I got to put him in the top 20. Top 15.
I go top 10.
Yeah.
I might even go top 5.
I could believe it.
He's somewhere between, for action movie villains, he's somewhere between 5 and 10 would be my guess if I had to just gut feeling on Patrick for me.
I'd love to know if that's the case. Then who would be right next to him?
Well, we talk about this every week.
We need to make a visual
Well,
because
I'm
there's so many.
We do need to make a visual because now we've referenced enough of them. I'd love to see where we each put everybody and like where that chart.
So not next to, but like in the ballpark. What would be next
Of the
to?
action movie villains?
Yeah.
Well, Gary Oldman in Air Force One is up there.
Okay.
He's like a great one. We've talked about him before. He's definitely a top 10.
Ed Harris and The Rock.
Ed Harris and The Rock is another one that for me. And
Hans Gruber? Where's Hans Gruber?
Hans
in all
Gruber,
this?
yeah. Hans Gruber's a
there.
great action movie villain.
Absolutely.
He's one of the great ones. You probably have to go with the original Terminator in the first Terminator as an action movie villain.
Totally.
As one of the all-time greats. None of the Rambo movies have a villain that matters. I mean, yeah, we'll start to go down this road and ramble, but I mean that's essentially that's the company. It's the guys, because what always happens is basically the villain in the best ones of these almost always is a guy that if that performance existed in a movie that wasn't an action movie, it would be like
Oscar
loosely awards worthy,
Yeah.
right? Like that's like where we look at Ed Harris and The Rock. The reason we love him so much is like if it wasn't in The Rock, that's a great performance. He's great.
Yes.
He's fantastic in that movie. It just happens to be in The Rock, so people just laugh it off.
And you find in these movies that the villain is so great that it just carries the film.
Yeah, like if I mean Robert Patrick's awesome in this movie. So yeah,
He
for
is.
me, he's I would guess he's like right around number 6 or 7.
I'm going 15. Top 15.
What do you got, Ryan? I know it's on the spot. This is a tough one. We always just kind of ballpark it.
I think that he's essentially a silent, villain. He speaks very few words.
Yeah.
It's a very physical performance, and he does an amazing job with that. In terms of like super memorable villains, I mean, if I separated out what he does special effects wise, and it's just his performance alone, I'd say it's probably in the top 20 for me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting way to put it. I mean, I
think
take out the special effects.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at all the other things that are going on with that character, he did an amazing job. I wouldn't take anything away from Robert Patrick's performance at all. But I would say, yeah, probably within. I mean, see, I immediately invoke things like Balak from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Sure.
Who's a character who's suave, who rarely does anything violent whatsoever. He barely breaks a sweat, but you hate him and you're fascinated by him. Hans Gruber from most part, again, suave.
Hans Gruber
Seems like he's just so much more intelligent.
Oh,
so much more than
Swayze Point Break. That just came to mind.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you didn't say that.
He's a fantastic villain. He's an anti-hero, but he's great.
Yeah, I
I call him a straight-up anti-hero.
Yeah.
One of my favorite villains of all time is Joaquin Phoenix in Gladiator, but I can't have him in this conversation. But
it's hard to qualify.
You can't. But it's those type of villains where they don't really do anything until there's like their one battle scene.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk hero. So where do you guys put the T-800?
It's interesting. This is, I know we're not supposed to talk about the first one, but Arnold playing the exact same character is the only person ever to be on AFI's top villain and hero list for the same person.
Yeah, for the same
character. Pacino's on it for 2 different characters, but Arnold is the only person on it for the same. And I think he's great in this. Like, he is an incredible hero, but I don't know. For me, it's hard for me to put him in the top 20. I don't know why.
I'm with you. I agree. I do love Schwarzenegger in this movie. He's great. I mean, he's so great.
I think it's because he's not human. I think that's what it is. It's hard to relate to these characters, or to this character, because he is a robot.
He sacrifices himself so completely.
But he's a learning computer. He's
true.
He's bringing out the human in other people.
A learning computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for my heroes, like I love the everyman hero. I love the guy that's got like those human characteristics that make them believable. They've got weak tendencies, like Denzel last week. He was an alcoholic. He wasn't in incredible shape. He wasn't super strong. Like the thing that I love about heroes is that they are also believable.
Right.
And they can be the everyman.
Oh, I thought of another one on the villains list.
Just move on, Ben.
Yeah, move on, Ben.
Castor Troy.
Castor Troy is great. He's very good. Face Off. Got to do that one soon.
Yeah. All right. So that's mine. We kind of agree. That was yours.
That was mine.
I was piggybacking my idea with it. I agree with you. I have a hard time. There's all these characters that come to mind, like John McClane and Ethan Hunt and all these that are just so for me that I just immediately I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna put it ahead of T2 Schwarzenegger. Like he's easily top 50. He's easily top 30.
Yes.
I don't think he breaks 20. He might be just outside 30. He's somewhere between like 25 and 40 would be if I had to just that'd be my ballpark.
Yeah.
Probably just outside top 30 for me. 32, something like that. What do you think?
I'm very different here. I can't disengage my childhood memories of Schwarzenegger with any of these things. For me, he's in the top 5.
Oh wow,
that's
okay.
Excellent.
No, I mean it's him. It's seeing him off camera, his humor, seeing it come out in scenes in Terminator or whatever the film might be. But you just mentioned Denzel Washington.
Yeah,
It's like also anything he's in I love.
Yeah,
and every time he's playing a hero, like even what was the last one? Equalizer.
Yeah,
not a great film. Love every second he's on screen.
Oh yeah, he's incredible.
Every second.
He would have loved our Man on Fire episode. We had such just like a Denzel love fest.
Yeah.
The Denzel Tony Scott connection we've established is the ultimate action movie connection. It's basically we've decided it's like the holy grail.
Yeah.
Them working together is the greatest thing that's ever happened to action movies.
Yeah.
So we completely agree.
Actually, one thing though that reminds me is when Linda's over there and she's watching the two of them high five and play.
Yeah.
And you have that moment of where she realizes it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
why John created the Terminators or why he has them.
Right.
They'll never leave you. They'll never betray you. They'll never get drunk and hit you.
Yeah.
They will always love you and be there for you.
I made a note about this last night watching it. Exactly what you're saying. It's a family unit in a strange sort of way.
Maybe that might have bumped him up to the top 25, top 20 for me. Because that realization right there that I had forgotten about is, it just puts a heart behind it.
Yeah, I mean, we always say with this, like, because they're just ballparks.
Yeah.
We don't have to within 10 unless you were going to really make the list. So it's fine if you're outside the top 20 or whatever. Like, if you're close to it,
right?
Yeah, like, it's not an exact science here because we don't make the list every week. But what does it feel like? And yeah, that's fair.
Linda Hamilton is definitely top 5 for me.
Oh, for female action hero, yeah, she has just strong case for number 1.
I feel like it's undisputable.
Yeah,
like, you can't argue that she's not in the top 5.
I completely agree, and there's so few of them.
Yeah. There's more nowadays. They come out more often. You get to see more, but it's definitely an evolving category. So let's talk about recast, guys. This is the part of the show, guys, where you like to chime in on YouTube and show us your recasting, and often your recasts are as good or better than ours. So I believe there was one last week. Wasn't it Idris Elba? Somebody said that.
Yeah, it was great. It was
Man
a
on
great
Fire.
recast. Yeah.
Idris Elba as Denzel in Man on Fire. If you were going to remake the movie today, I thought that was pretty damn good.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for commenting last week. I know Ben and I haven't gotten back to you yet. We've been very, very busy, but we will. We have not forgotten about you.
No,
we do love your recasts. We always read them.
Yeah, that's always a super, super fun one. So the roles,
I concur.
The roles in this that we're recasting are Schwarzenegger, Robert Patrick, and Linda Hamilton. It's difficult to recast kids, so we usually stay away from it.
Yes.
There's just not enough child actors that I'm super, super aware of, or our guests usually are to go in that direction.
90s Haley Joel Osment. He's not great enough.
Yeah. If anything just comes to mind, with Joe Morton and you want to recast Miles Dyson, feel free, but that wasn't in the description, so it's those 3. So let's start with Linda Hamilton. Ryan, who do you got?
Recast with Linda Hamilton.
Who is your
modern day recast?
See, I'm going to let you guys do this first because I start from a different place. I start with Schwarzenegger, who I'd recast there.
Okay.
And I
Well, let's start with Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, let's start with Schwarzenegger. Because I had asked
right.
you before the show, and you were like, you got to wait for the episode. So I've been dying.
To me, it sort of builds this way. I would go with Jackie Earle Haley.
Oh my God, that's
Terminator.
great.
Jackie Earle Haley?
Yes.
That's great.
At his current age.
Are you talking about the guy?
Yes, exactly. I'm talking about the guy. I'm talking about Rorschach from
right.
Watchmen.
And from Little
I
Children?
think you go a different route entirely. I think that I love Dwayne Johnson. I love The Rock. I thought he was
He couldn't
really
pull this off.
Yeah, you can't.
But the thing is that people say, well, who's the new Schwarzenegger? I don't think there is a new Schwarzenegger.
There's not.
I think if you go somewhat comparatively, you could say, well, The Rock is, he's got personality, he's got all that stuff is true. And I like him, so it's no slam on him at all. But in terms of like recasting a movie like this, where do you go with it? I mean, I feel the same way about like Superman.
Right.
It's like, why are we going with another, and I'm sure people will hate this. It's like, well, why are you going another tall white guy with blue eyes? Well, no, you could do that. Absolutely. No problem there. But why not look at it slightly differently? I mean, the idea of bringing in someone who looks practically homeless.
Right.
And completely, unintimidating at all, turns out to be this ruthless killing machine, I think is a really interesting direction, and that's where I would have gone with it.
I love your tenacity and your defense of it.
I love that cast. Actually, I think that's really smart because you can't recast Arnold. You can't write The Rock down on this piece of paper.
Otherwise,
it's a
you're
complete
going,
cop-out.
gosh, that's not Arnold. No.
And you can't write down Tom Hardy. It's a cop out.
Right.
Even mine's a cop out. It was honestly, I was just like, who can I put here?
Who'd you put?
Henry Cavill, Superman.
Yeah.
You make him look kind of creepy. You bust him up a little bit. You shave his head, or maybe change his hair. Like his,
he could be like
stature.
a fashion model Terminator.
Exactly. So that's the thing. That's why
Or he can
he's
work
too
at
pretty
IKEA,
for it.
And
But I do remember him in Superman. He's just jacked, and he's not just like shredded jacked. He's massive.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that Arnold obviously is. I don't really love my recast on this one. This is like the first recast that I've done. This one character. I like my other two, but this one character is just so hard for me.
I disliked all of my Schwarzenegger recast ideas because where I started in my head was like, okay, this is the sequel, and he's clearly aged past the initial one. So if this was Terminator 2 was being remade now, and in theory Terminator 1 had come out in like 2004 or 2006 or something. This is a guy that had to have looked a little younger and a little more intimidating when the first one came out, so he's a little more aged. Who can I think of who's roughly 40? Hugh Jackman came to mind, but I was like, that sounds like he's just because he's jacked.
Yeah.
You can't. You just have to go with Schwarzenegger again. That was what I decided. I just was like, I'm not going to do the disservice. I mean, think about when they tried to put Sam Worthington in Salvation as a Terminator. It wasn't that he was bad. He's got the glassy eyes enough that he could sort of look like a robot. Like that's what they wanted. They wanted
the glassy eyes,
like this this physical. And it's fine, but it was completely unmemorable. There is no Schwarzenegger, just like you said.
That's why he's in Genesis.
Yeah, and it's just so. Anyway, that was where I skipped the Schwarzenegger recast.
You know why? I know I'm interrupting our recast, but while we're on the topic of Genesis, we do have some friends that do a show here, Bateman.
Yeah, absolutely. The Anatomy of a Movie folks. They do a lot of new releases every week. They'll cover several, and I know that next week they're going to be covering Terminator Genesis, which is I haven't seen yet. It's just came out. What you said last night?
Yeah, I believe it was released last night.
Yeah,
small release.
So it goes big this weekend. And they will be covering it next week, so please check their show out. They do a great job, and you can get some current Terminator information when that one comes out.
Yeah, that's why I did T2 this week. Check it out because of the release, and Anatomy Movie is a great show. So check it out. Let's get back to recast. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Of course. Schwarzenegger. Let's move on to Robert Patrick, I guess.
Yeah.
Ryan.
No.
You know, I'm going first on this one because I love mine. And
we went for the same one.
We did. We had to.
This is the most obvious, right?
It is. It's the most obvious, and he's just he would be so perfect. There's literally not anyone else. Like, there's other great guys that could play this role, but in my mind, no one could do it better than Michael Fassbender now.
Completely agree. He's the guy. Like it's a cop out because of Prometheus, because he's an evil robot.
Right. Exactly.
But like the look, the seriousness, the evil, the intensity, just all of the things that made Robert Patrick so good. It's like Fassbender is the carbon copy modern day version.
Yeah, and he'd be clean, like good. He'd be like a clean, like believable cop.
Give him the same haircut.
Yeah, he's just ruthless.
Cop uniform.
Yeah,
totally physically believable. Yeah. What do you got, Ryan?
Well, I mean, I didn't have anyone in particular, but I like where you're going with this, because to me, if you have, again, you'll understand why I'm saying top down from Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
If you go Jackie Earle Haley, then you can say, well, now the sky's the limit, because if the villain is handsome,
right,
and really, you know, if you go say Henry Cavill, is it?
Yeah, it was for the Terminator. Yeah.
You know, almost go through who are the top 10 like heartthrob, you know, mid-20s, early 30s guys.
Yeah.
And really the sky's the limit. You can play it any which way you want in that respect. As
Gosling,
long as they sort of
could play
fit.
Gosling could do it.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah,
you know, as an interesting counterpoint to that. Now we're in completely uncharted territory in terms of what the audience's expectation is.
Fair.
That's where I would go with it.
Okay.
For Linda Hamilton, I went, and this feels a little bit of a cop-out because I just saw her be such a badass, but I went with Charlize Theron. I just think at her age now and what she did in Mad Max, and like, it just feels right. I'm imagining all of the physically intimidating things that Linda Hamilton did, and I'm thinking about all the crazy and the awesome and the sunglasses and the guns.
Yep.
I'm just imagining Charlize Theron doing all of it, and it totally plays for me. I think she would just knock it out of the park.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Should be great. I had a few. I went Emily Blunt first, and I immediately had to retract it. Yeah, because I'm like, I always use Emily Blunt. I just love her so much.
Edge of Tomorrow did such wonders for our belief in her ability to just be such a badass.
Just a killer.
Yeah.
I went because you did remind me about the whole age thing, and Emily Blunt even though she could have a 13-year-old kid, she doesn't look like she would have a 13-year-old kid, even though he's 9 in the movie. I went Julianne Moore.
I like that.
If you could get her to work out like Linda Hamilton had to do for this movie.
Yeah.
6 months of intense, like, jiu-jitsu, boxing, like, cardiovascular, no-fat diet. Julianne Moore could totally pull this off.
She could.
That's very weird.
It is, right?
No, because that's who I was going to pick.
Oh, really? High five. Up top.
That's very weird.
Boom.
She's intense
Down
enough.
low.
Down low. Oh, that's a callback to the movie.
Yeah. Because they do it in the Terminator.
And it was a really lame callback, too.
But it was still, it worked.
I like that one. That's good. That's very good.
Yeah.
I mean, she does have the physicality to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
would she still be age appropriate, I wonder?
I think she can. I mean, because she's still...
This is probably another time for another show, guys, but I would just say that that's one thing that fascinates me about a certain generation now watching movies that are in their 20s or 30s or younger, is that they're venerating a lot of films that took place, that were shot in the 80s and early 90s. Look at the age of the cast in those movies.
Right.
They weren't cast for being in their as a hot 20-year-olds or whatever. There's mature adults making these films.
Yeah.
And look at Alien, look at Aliens, look at Terminator, look at all these films. I think that's one of the things about it is I think there's a certain cynical nature to Hollywood now, where it's like, let's cast who's trending.
Yes.
And why do these films might have a nice, it might have a nice box office, but they have no shelf life. Nobody gives a damn. I certainly don't. That's why I think films that have older actors, they resonate because you actually feel like these people are really experiencing this. They have more stakes in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a cynical, casting call. So
Certainly.
that's my opinion.
Do we need to touch on Cage versus Cruise?
No, I think we skip it this week.
It's a funny idea. The idea of either of them playing the Terminator, the idea of either of them playing the T-1000.
Cruise could play the Terminator easily.
I think Cruise could pay the T-1000.
Either one. Why not Cruise on Cruise?
Yeah.
Nothing would make me happier.
Cruise
can do anything.
Favorite movie of all
Cruise
time.
can do anything.
That was a little gay. But
Yeah, it's the best. All right, let's skip it this week.
Yeah, let's skip it this week. We got to talk about Trace. We got to do our categorizing.
Yeah. So before let's do the categorizing and let's talk a little about your movie. So first of all, what we do is at the end of the show every week we talk about what of the 3 action movie categories this movie fits into. Which of the 3? Sorry, I got a little dyslexic for a minute. And those 3 categories are totally ridiculous, totally legitimate, and legitimately ridiculous. Essentially, it's fall off a cliff of absurdity, kind of like Face Off, completely legitimate, kind of like The Fugitive or Die Hard, and the pinnacle, perfect hybrid of absurd meets awesome, which is like The Rock and Point Break. Movies that are campy, yet quality and engaging the whole time. Which of the 3 categories does Terminator 2 Judgment Day fit into?
Let's hear it. Let's go, baby.
Totally legitimate.
Totally legitimate.
100%.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Not even a question in my mind. I thought when I was imagining it as legitimately ridiculous.
Right, the pinnacle.
When I watched it again, it's totally legit.
Yeah. I agree. I 100% agree. It was on the line for me for a little bit, but first of all, the robots were traveling back in time. Once you get over that,
Yeah.
get over it.
just get over that.
Get over that. That's the movie. That's the whole premise of the movie.
Right.
If you can travel back in time, then you can have some metamorphic metal that can turn into anything. Basically, it touches.
Polyalloy.
Yeah. So I was flirting with that line, but I do have to go totally legitimate.
Yeah, that's me. What about you, Ryan?
I just think it's a hybrid of legitimate and ridiculous. So I think it's totally legitimate and sometimes ridiculous.
So the middle category.
So legitimately ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go in the middle. That's fair. I was close.
That's our favorite category anyway.
It's the best category. Like I said, in memory, that's what this movie was to me. I was watching it again. I bumped it up. But truthfully, the ones that fit the middle category are usually the most entertaining. This, for me, just for whatever reason.
It's just some tonal choices that Cameron makes, I think, that make it that way. And one of them is the Bad to the Bone song that comes out at the very beginning, which had already been overused in another film. And then like I Need a Vacation. There are moments in it that you're like,
those are the things that make me.
You're winking to the audience in a way, and it kind of changes the tone for me a little bit.
Certainly,
I agree.
certainly.
That's my.
All right. Well, before we wrap today, we want to talk to you a little bit. You have a movie coming out this fall.
I have a film coming out in October.
So tell us a little bit. Let's run the trailer.
Let's run the trailer. Let's watch it.
It's a very short teaser trailer.
Yeah.
Very short.
For Trace.
Judgment Day.
I'm a huge horror movie guy, by the way.
Please confirm your message. I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Do you guys hear that? It's like a voice.
It's a broadcast outside of this world.
Looks like the sync is off.
That's just for us.
Don't you see? You open the door!
It reads us. Next on the list.
There is no list! Leave us alone!
John!
Somebody help! Please! Rebecca!
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, this is your style all the way.
Yeah. Ben knows I'm a huge horror movie guy. I watch all of them. I love them. I love paranormal. I like those fingers.
You like the fingers?
I like the fingers. They're
Awesome.
creepy. So when do we get screener tickets for this? What's going on, man?
Yes, absolutely. I'll make sure. yeah. It'll be available in October, and we're going to be at some film festivals, which I'm not at liberty to say which ones they are.
Sure.
Which I wish I could. But yeah, it is a paranormal film. It has it winks at quantum physics
Okay.
and the way we perceive things.
So you wrote and
leave it at
directed
that.
this film, right?
I did.
And this is the first film that you've directed.
This is the
Or
first
the
one
first-
I'm admitting that I've directed.
Okay, all right.
When I met you 10 years ago, we talked about, like, at the time,
Right.
you were kind of like, you had a bunch of stuff you had written, you've been writing forever. You had one movie, I think, called, I won't talk about the name of it.
Yeah, don't say that.
That you had sort of, you'd messed around on, and it was kind of your learning experience. Later on, there was a second one, a few years later, that was like Get Your Feet Wet.
Yeah.
And then this is the one, like, since I've talked to you, that this is the first, sort of feels real to you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's some great. These three guys, Jim Glock, Miles Feinberg, and Joe Dane, great producers. They saw the short, loved it, and it became like the inaugural film for this new label.
And the story for how this short was made that you were telling me before the show, I don't know how much you actually do want to talk about it on the show, was crazy. It was just like a happenstance of some buddies that were like, I have this and this equipment and this.
I love hearing your version of the story. I want to hear it.
No,
seriously, I do.
Really? You want to hear my version?
Yeah, I want to hear your version.
Okay, so he was sitting on the couch before the show, and I want to talk to him about his movie, and he was telling me that
There's a couch over here.
Yeah, there's a couch that's over there. We never show it. His buddies, they live next door. They kind of like an open door policy between the two houses or whatever. And he went in there, and they had $250,000 worth of film equipment, everything, rigging, lights, cameras, absolutely everything, sound. And he's like, "What is this?" It's like, "Oh, we just finished our final, and we just have it for another week." He's like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I'll be back." So he goes home. He types up. He takes an excerpt from his script, like what do you say, 17-page?
It's like a 15, 17 page
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
He brings it over. He goes, "Check this out. Should we do this?" I'm like, why the hell not, man?
Yeah.
So so they tear the guy's apartment apart, just completely rip it apart. They film it in there. There's what was the guy's name? Newton. The guy that got the orchestra together for you guys.
Oh yeah. No. It was someone else.
A friend of his. Yeah. Just they literally had someone to do sound, someone to do CGI, all the camera equipment, and they were just like, let's just do this for fun.
Yeah.
And then the producers saw it. One of your producers saw it.
And the moral of the story is that a bunch of friends did a movie for fun,
Yeah.
and we wanted to entertain ourselves, and it got noticed. As opposed to, front loading it with all these expectations, we just decided let's do something in our own ecosystem, put it out there, and see what happens. And that's the moral of the story.
And that hits home for us because of our show.
Right.
We're just two buddies that love movies.
Yeah, that's why we do this.
Especially action movies.
Yeah.
And that's why it is so easy to do this. I'm sorry, we keep cutting you off. I know you're about to say something.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was mostly just listening, and I was going to make a stupid joke, but I'm not going to make it anymore. So where can people find out more about the movie?
Yeah.
Go to terrafilms.com, I think it is, or .net.
I think it looked like at the end of the trailer. It said
Okay,
something like
on
that.
the end of the trailer, just rewind and you'll see that.
And if they want to watch the trailer again, where can they find that?
Facebook has Terrafilms has a Facebook presence and a website. So
Excellent.
Yeah.
We're
Very,
excited
very
to see
cool.
it, man.
Yeah,
Thanks, man.
we'll definitely give the shout out when it officially comes out, as long as we get the screener tickets.
And I'll be down at Comic-Con doing some stuff. So
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So keep your eyes open.
At Comic-Con, say what's up to Ryan.
Absolutely.
That's going to do it for our show today, guys. So thank you, Ryan Brookhart, for coming by.
Thank you.
And talking about movies with us. This was super, super fun. One of the great movies of our time.
Absolutely.
So great episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to follow along with me, Andrew, or Ryan, you can find us on social media. I am at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter and Instagram.
At Andrew Ghai, once again, on Twitter.
And what am I?
At Ryan Brookhart.
There you go.
Not another bus this time. We will see you guys
Use the
next
retarder.
week. Use the retarder. Do it. Come on, it's okay. Do it.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners and principals.